To kick off the June Next Fest, we're going to be taking a look at one of the more entertaining and polished demos to hit my inbox leading up to it, and that is Shadow Gambit: The Cursed Crew. At first glance, some things about the game kicking around in the background may seem familiar, and that's for good reason. This title is made by the same people who created Shadow Tactics games as well as Desperados 3. Shadow Gambit is special though in that it's Me Games' first self-published game on PC specifically, which gives them far more control over the world, its characters, and the story, even if they do stick with the familiar formula that they used for their other titles under traditional publishers. And if you like those, and are up for a bit of pirate flair, then this game is going to be a pretty enjoyable experience for you too. In the demo, we are fairly restricted on how far into the title we can go, and this is to be expected, especially since the full game still has a couple months of cooking until full release. But don't let that fool you, there is still plenty here to keep you busy for a few hours, and it does give you a good taste of the world and the crew you'll be diving into. Starting with the world, we're cursed pirates, essentially skeletons and ghosts of various flavors, trying not to get destroyed by a rather nefarious holy group that doesn't seem to like our skulls or our crossbones, or even our talking ship for that matter. But they do want the treasure of the ship's captain, and while we want it as well, we're going to need to reassemble the crew, quite literally, and fight our way through some hairy situations. The overall energy weirdly gives me an interesting mix of some of the more ghostly parts of Sea of Thieves thrown into a fairly well-designed strategy game that relies on Me's traditional mix of real-time and pause-based strategy games that have you hiding in bushes, distracting targets, and doing coordinated paired assaults with your crewmates while avoiding detection. The flavor is thick and it doesn't take itself too serious, but also it isn't slapstick either, creating a nice balance. Even in the demo, there's a fairly decent mix of crewmates, with the limiting factor being the resources to revive them, and in the full game you'll be able to actually go down proper character arcs with each of them, along with side quests and the main quest to gather your treasure. And by doing so, you'll get the resources to grab their special skills as well. While not a massive diverse tree or anything, it does give some feeling of progression for each of your crew. This is made extra noteworthy due to the crew actually feeling fairly distinct from each other, each being tuned to fill what amounts to 2 roles in battle through their skill selection. And while you can use them for, well, whatever you want, following these roles does make life quite a bit easier, with everyone from a plant-covered medic to a sniper to even a pirate with a hoarding issue. You will have options, and when you revive them, you even get access to practice areas to learn their abilities, which means no blindly learning them in missions. The enemies are similarly fairly varied. Rather than just killing basic patrolling enemies, you have a bit of flavor, with enemies ranging from basic fodder to leaders that will go around and talk to soldiers and even go searching if one goes missing, to ritualists that need to be taken out to unlock certain goals, and even enemies that are paired with each other, requiring you to take them both out at the same time or end up with them reviving each other. The world also has at least a handful of interactions, and while not as complex, at least not in this early segment, as some of the previous games by the team, it still has plenty of things you can do, from dropping ladders to sabotaging cranes, and even, at least with the characters that can swim, swimming around obstacles. Though, as the main character says about them not being able to swim, it is not easy when you have a sword through your chest. On the more mechanical end, the controls can be a bit odd at times, and they do take some getting used to for sure, even with most of them being rebindable. I think the character design and overall mix though makes it feel a lot better than their previous titles, and it offsets some of the weirdness here, not to mention overcoming the perfectionist drag I used to have with this kind of title. And not in the manner of being made any easier, especially since you can adjust the difficulty, but rather in just how tightly the interactions and map design feel far more intentional, and just how much agency you have over your characters once you get the basic controls down. And of course, for titles like this, the game also includes an in-world method of rewinding and resetting time, which is exceptionally handy, as well as plenty of hotkey options that will let you do most actions much quicker than you see me doing in the background, since most of the footage is from my first dive through the demo, which, while I was still getting used to them and felt it was a good way to show that even if you're clumsy, as long as you figure out the puzzle part of the battle, you will be able to find your way through. This has helped thanks to all the information you need being easily accessible with minimal clicks, and while the hold to perform trope of modern games is still there at times, it's not offensively done. so I can tolerate it even if I'm not a huge fan of it in most titles. This is because it makes up for it with clearly marked noise radius effects, the skills listing takedown or effect durations, the fact that special enemies are less prone to distraction and it tells you that, and the overall layered but not obfuscated feel works out quite well. And if you're curious about how you did after completion, the mission actually gives you a review where you can watch your path, your kills, etc. while you went through the level. Obviously with adjusted timescale that you can adjust yourself, so it would actually make writing guides for this kind of interesting, since you could actually record your path with an overview and have it be fairly easy to follow. Now, while this is a first impressions video, not a full-blown review, and I actually give this title a big thumbs up, the game still cannot get away without some little bits of criticism, such as the controls being weird, like I said, and having a default WASD control scheme for camera controls would be nice, since while you can scroll the screen with the mouse and even the arrow keys, it's far less natural feeling compared to the other modern games, and while there are a lot of customizations for the keys, they're not comprehensive. The only other nitpick I would have is I would also like to see more options in the way of pure stealth in the battle, since as it stands, it felt far more geared towards the player doing full clears of an area compared to their previous titles, where you often leave enemies untouched and just work around them, while in this one, you do kill them all, or at least most of them. And while I personally prefer getting 100% kills, there are a decent number of players that do prefer minimal kills, at least as part of challenges. But as I said, these are nitpicky things, since I didn't have any technical issues, progression issues, or enjoyment issues. And for the most part, the demo, despite being tied to a game that's still months out, is really well done, and feels a lot smoother than its predecessors, which were already met with a lot of acclaim. And while it doesn't deviate far from the formula, they are still refining it and pairing it with concepts that it works really well on. And honestly, the game ran smoother than some AAA games I've played recently. If I get my hands on the full game, it would absolutely be on my shortlist for a full review, and I would likely find more to drill down on in terms of criticism, but the pacing and everything from the demo worked quite well for me, and if they can continue that for the full 20+ hour experience of the final title, they'll have accomplished something most other games didn't quite hit. Now, if you're interested in other Next Fest games, stay tuned, since I do hope to feature several of them this week, since there's some pretty solid indie and AA titles floating up that absolutely are worth checking out.
So we have to take them down together. Then we grab what we came for and hightail it back to the ship. Let's do it.
Wait!
What?
What about the High Priest?
Oh, just give him a hug.
Okay, love that plan.
Abominations! I call upon the maidens for...
The power of the cursed belongs to the cursed.